Interwebs, welcome to Let's Fix Computers. I think it's going to be a Let's Fix anyway. I'm doing an experiment today. This is my GTX 1070 that is from my computer at home. This is my daily graphics card. I bought this on secondhand off eBay about a year ago because I quite like buying secondhand graphics cards for homes. You can get yourself a deal if you're willing to roll the dice. And this one turned out pretty good. I'm quite happy with this thing and it performs brilliantly. However, I've got a NZXT H500 and the airflow is not very good, and this thing runs very loud under heavy loads. And I was wondering, because this thing is probably, who knows what, 3 years old, something like that, maybe 4 years old. I wondered whether I would get any kind of improvement by changing the thermal paste in it. So I've got the GameMax build in front of me, and I'm going to put it in the GameMax build, and we're going to run up a couple of different tests. I'm going to do a couple of benchmarks and a couple of stress tests with it as it is, and I'm going to pay attention to the temperatures, the boost speed, and the temperatures, the boost speed, and the fan speed. And we're going to see what we get on those. Then I'm going to take it to bits and refurbish the cooling. So we're going to, there's not a huge amount of dust in there. There's a little bit around the edges. We're going to take that dust out, put some new thermal paste on it, put it all back together again, and then we'll run the same tests again and see if we get any improvement out of it. So I'm expecting to see like a 1 degree improvement. I'm expecting this to be more or less a waste of time. However, if we end up getting a notable improvement, that'll be really interesting, because it'll mean that if you've got an aging graphics card or a second-hand graphics card, it will mean that, yes, it is actually worth taking it to bits and overhauling it. So I'm quite interested to see what we get out of this. And, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference in the real world of making my computer any quieter. I've got to fix the airflow in my case to really do that. But who knows, maybe this will help. So let's get this thing turned on, and we'll run up some tests and we'll get some baseline figures. Right, so now I'm stress testing in Firmark, and I'm just paying attention. We're boosting to about 1900. Bouncing off of the power limit. Again, we're at stock. I haven't overclocked this card or anything like that. And the fans are slowly creeping up. So I'm going to leave this to run until it reaches an equilibrium, just so we can see what it tops out at. And then what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to put the side panel on with the case fans turned off to try and replicate the poor airflow conditions in my case at home. And hopefully then that should help try and get any kind of visual improvement possible. But by running tests both open panel and closed panel, hopefully we can find out what kind of differences you can expect from this, whether or not you have poor airflow. Alright, we seem to have maxed out on our temperature now. We're sitting at about 70 degrees. Fans 43. I think that's going to stay where it is. We might get 44 on the fans, because heat soak will start setting in, but I don't think we're going to go much over that. So let's now just make sure that those cables can bend, and I'm going to stick the side panel on. And immediately we've seen a very slight temperature increase. And the fans are creeping up. So just instantly, now I've restricted the airflow, because although this is a vented front case, but the case fans are turned off, so it's getting no assistance at all, which kind of replicates the conditions in an NZXT case. Oh, I'm sad about NZXT. Yeah, see, now we're getting the issues that I see at home. You can see the temperature and the fans are slowly creeping up. I'm going to leave that to run, and I'll get back to you in a moment when that's topped out. Well, it looks like we've maxed out again, and the temperatures are up. We're up to 74, fans 56%. that's not as high as I wanted them to run. To put things in perspective, if I'm playing a very heavy game at home, you know, something that's really thrashing my PC, I can expect to be seeing the fans looking for 70%, 75%, which is why I have an issue, because any graphics card that starts reaching that kind of fan duty cycle is going to get noisy. And that will be really noticeable when the rest of the computer is very quiet as well. But at any rate, let's roll with that and just see what kind of improvement we get. So we've got our baselines. Let's do... That'll do, I think. I don't really know what I'm looking for with these tests. I'm going to change my GPU paste and see if we get any differences at all. I'd also notice that at this settings now, we've dropped to about 1860 megahertz solid. So our boost has dropped off very slightly. So what would be handy, for example, is if we change out the thermal paste and we see an improvement, maybe we'll be able to hold that 1900 megahertz boost all the way through these temperatures. That'd be kind of nice. That much being said, we're up to 58% on the fans now. It is still slowly creeping up. So, yeah, I think given long enough, we've been running for... Have we got a timer anywhere? We've been running for 7.5 minutes. If I gave this like half an hour, because obviously like, I game for several hours at a time. So if we gave this like half an hour or so, I would wager that we'll see those fans up to those high temperatures. There's 59% on the fans. So yeah, you get the idea. So I think we've proven our point. Let's see if we can get an improvement on that. So let's stop the test. And I'm going to shut it down. Off at the socket. Oh, this thing's going to be burning hot now, isn't it? Ow, yes it is. Balls. Might actually have to wait for it to cool down. I probably should have ran it up to 100% fan speed for a minute or so, just to blow the heat out of it. This is what air compressors are for, though, so... Right, so I've removed the functional backplate we've got off of this one. We've got that horrid, weird goop that comes off of these thermal pads, which, interestingly, doesn't look like it's been making very good contact around that area. But, you know, the backplate isn't going to do a huge amount, but still, interesting nonetheless. I should buy some more. I should buy some, just like buy this by the roll so I can replace it on site, but I don't have any of that right now. So we'll try not to disturb the existing thermal pads. So now I'm going to remove the the PCI bracket of the card, and then we'll take off all the other screws. Interesting. I'd seen that subframe in there. That is one heck of a dense cooler. It is a good air cooler, this. I think the fans on it are knackered because they've got very noisy bearings as well, but that heat pipe design is immense. Very, very cool. So I think this plate will just pull straight off as well. Something's resisting. I think I've missed a screw down the end. I have. There we go. So there's the bare card. Interesting. Very sparsely populated VRM setup on it. Maybe the same reference card that's used for a higher card or the 1070 Ti maybe, because this is a non-Ti card. And they've got, so there's thermal pads on the VRMs and, oh, that's interesting. That's a straight hole through to the top there. Huh, okay. Interesting two-part design. Very cool. There's a lot of grot in here in general. I don't know how much of this to clean up. And as for the thermal paste, the thermal paste is a little bit tacky. Looks like that was fine. Yeah. However, hopefully, if we swap out that thermal paste, if it's been baked, then some fresh stuff should perform a little bit better. So I'm going to clean all this up. And like you can see all this sort of oily staining on everything from the thermal pads, the sill pads. I don't know enough about sill pads to know exactly what that oily residue is or whether it's a bad thing or not. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up the card and the cooler. I'm not going to apply anything to the pads themselves because I don't have any replacements for those. So I'm going to leave those as is, but we'll clean up the card and the metalwork just so that oily residue is gone. And then if that oily residue is a bad thing, then at least we've reduced it without actually potentially damaging the sill pads. Alright, so now to wash this card, I'm just going to drown it in isopropyl alcohol. And then I'm going to go over it with a toothbrush. And that should hopefully just take off all the schmutz on the card. If I had an ultrasonic cleaner, I could put it in an ultrasonic bath and that'd be cool, but I don't have one of those. I would like one. But yeah, a couple of £100 for something that I don't really need. You can see how the alcohol has gone all sort of spotty, like the wet look. And I think that's where it's mixing with the residue. Okay, and I'll give the back the same treatment. Alright, that's had kind of limited effect. I think I may have only succeeded in just spreading around that residue there. Really, I think a proper ultrasonic bath is the only thing that's really going to make this card sparklingly clean. The other thing I've noticed while working on it as well is we've actually got what looks like some damage there. Almost looks like something might have gone bang. That cap looks like it's had an event, but it's part of a bank of caps on that VRM. And it's failed open. So I wonder whether that's why this card was originally being sold. So something eBay lottery, am I right? I'm not going to do anything about that though because this card works and I don't really want to replace it. So I'm going to leave that the hell alone. That's not great and I'm not really happy to see that, but yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, he says, re-thermal pasting a working card. Do as I say, not as I do. Anyway, let's put some new thermal paste on this thing and we'll put it back together again. So what exactly holds on? Interesting. So the main heatsink is actually only bolted on just with those 4 bolts. And the back plate just bolts through to this subplate. That's kind of interesting to know that when you pick up this card by the cooler, all of the weight is actually just on those 4 screws. So, don't know how I feel about that, but okay. I guess I may as well just bolt the back and front plates on for now then. And I'm leaving these screws just half a turn out to allow the plate to move about slightly so it can just automatically orient itself as I put the other screws in. Alright, there we go. Looks fine. I'm just going to give that a quick wipe down just to remove a few marks that I've left on it. There we go. Lovely. Right, let's get this thing back in the computer and we'll see if any of the past hour or so... Right, let's get this thing fitted back inside the computer and we'll see if any of that was worth doing at all. I have a suspicion that the answer is going to be no. However, the only way is to try it and find out. Right, I did run a 3D Mark run before we did all of this stuff just to get a comparison score, but that's not going to be any different. I really don't think it's going to change at all because I also ran the 3D Mark run with the case open. So I'm going to jump straight into Furmark because that's the one that I think is going to show up the gaps. So let's kick off into the GPU stress test again. And just like with before, I'm running it case open and we're going to wait for it to equalize. And then we're going to run it case closed and see what it does. Interestingly, straight away, we're at 1936 on the boost. Can't have made that much of a difference, surely. We'll see what it settles down to once it's warmed up. I'll leave that to run for a bit. I'll get back to you. Okay, right. Our temperature has gone up and we've leveled out again. And it looks like our boost speed has settled down at just shy of 1900 again. So, yeah, it looks like we don't get that free boost for nothing. Not really surprising. Fans at 35%, which I think is what they were at previously. I can't remember. Anyway, let's stick the side panel on and see what it does after that. Interesting results. So we're 10 minutes into this test, so we've been running for longer than previously. And we're at fans 50%, core 1873 megahertz, so just a scooch higher, and our temperature is at 71 degrees. So I don't think we've done enough to really make any real life alteration, you know, like the lower noise that I was looking for or something like that. However, we have got a measurable difference here. We've been running the test for a longer period of time and we have a lower temperature, a lower fan speed, and a higher boost clock. Not by any meaningful amount, but still higher. So I'd call that a win, to be honest. I don't think, honestly, I don't think this was worth the hassle. Like, if you do this kind of thing on a day-to-day basis, then you could look at this and say, oh yeah, I'm going to do that on my card. If you're not familiar with taking cards and coolers apart and stuff like that, I would say it's not worth it. But kind of interesting. That did make a difference. And then let's just do a quick demonstration on the importance of case airflow, which I learned through having a H500. If I turn my case fans onto low speed, let's see how long it takes them to clear that air. Yep, and we just drop by a degree or so. It's hard to see on the graph. Let me just remove the bench cam. You can see the graph in the bottom right there is actually starting to drop off now. So even with some case fans on just low speed that are practically inaudible, immediately we're seeing those fans drop off. And just for shiggles, let's turn them on to high. I would consider this to be too loud. However, just for the sake of it, what does that do to our temps? Yep, and we're still dropping. And obviously once those temps drop down to probably 60, probably once they get down to 65, we'll see the fans start dropping off. And yeah, the fans just drop down to 50%. And we'll also slowly see that boost clock start creeping up a bit more as well. So yeah, interesting experiment. Really, this is not a substitute for good airflow in your case. I should have done the fan test before I changed it out. However, either way, interesting test. Having left those fans on high speed for a bit longer, the temperature has started leveling out in the bottom right again. Our fans are down to 43%, our temperature is down to 62, and our core is back up to 1885. So the moral of this story is that changing your thermal paste is not a replacement for fixing your case airflow. And more to the point, my poor case airflow is actually hurting my overall performance slightly. Whether it's by any meaningful amount is difficult to tell. I doubt it makes a huge difference, but especially if I were trying to overclock this graphics card, which I'm not at the moment, but if I was trying to overclock, then that temperature would actually be hurting me quite a lot. So some interesting discoveries all round. I hope you guys found that as interesting as I did. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye for now. One final bit of waffle just at the editing stage here. It actually made a big difference at home. I thought that it would only be in stress tests where we would see any noticeable difference at all. However, my gaming PC is genuinely quieter. It is probably only a fractional difference, but it is just the difference between the fans hitting that annoyingly audible tone and staying below that threshold. So, as I say, for what I set out to do was just to lower the temperatures just enough to get the card noise down. It was actually a success. So yeah, definitely recommend trying it if you want to give it a whirl. Thanks a lot. Bye for now.